Hello, unstoppable real estate investors. I'm Brianna Starr, and with me is my guest for today's podcast, Jim Manning. And did I say that right, Jim?
You did, yeah, Jim
Yeah.
Manning.
All right.
Yeah.
And I have a treat for you, ladies and gentlemen, because Jim is the real deal in top 5% in the industry. And he's not done it once, he's not done it twice, he's done it more than that, three times plus. He started out working for a billionaire, hated it, and then went on to build his own world of wealth. So, Jim, welcome to the Unstoppable Real Estate Investor Top 5% podcast.
All right, well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So where I like to start is it's an Oprah style. I'm just interviewing you to learn about you, to have that inspire the audience and help someone off. Really what I hope for in the podcast is that listeners, watchers, it's not really a podcast because it's a live on Facebook, but anyway, that it inspires someone who might be stuck or might not know where they want to focus in the industry, and that they maybe hear something in your story that motivates them or gives them hope or shows them, oh, wow, maybe I could do that. So let's start, Jim, with what were you doing before real estate? Who's Jim before real estate?
All right, great question. So I got out of college in 2006, and that was when all the Great Recession was just beginning, and everything like kind of everything was hitting the fan, and I couldn't find a job right away, and
This was in
uh,
2006.
Yeah, this was 2006. So then the first gig I landed was a wine job where we were working for a self-made billionaire. And all we were doing was we were taking a bottle of wine out of his collection, putting a barcode on it, and then like sticking it back in. And this guy had the caliber of wealth that at one point I had $250,000 of wine in my hands. And it took us over 2 weeks to inventory his entire wine collection, right? And it was so,
Wow, what a kind
yeah.
of interesting, cool job. Why did you hate it? Was he a jerk?
Well, so why did I hate it? So
Or was it just boring?
yeah, I mean, it's very boring, very tedious, and there was a lot I learned from it too. So, what I ended up learning from it was this individual was had achieved the pinnacle of business success, and I started out as a 22-year-old fresh from college. Like, what I met this guy's girlfriend, and I was like, whoa, this guy's girlfriend, he's like in his 60s, he's wider than he is tall, and this his girlfriend's in her 20s and she's gorgeous. Like who is this guy? So I started idolizing him quite a bit. And but then as the onion peeled back, what I realized was that on the surface he had everything that a 22-year-old would want, but on the inside he was absolutely miserable. His daughters
Wow.
wouldn't talk to him and they hated him. They could hardly stand to be in the same room as him.
Oh,
And so it was an amazing opportunity for me to learn, like, wow, like America's amazing. Like you can fly on a private jet, drink $1,000 bottle of champagne. And, when you go on a private jet, you just like walk right on. It's like getting into a car and and you can get a couple states away pretty quick. And so I had kind of like that taste of the trappings of wealth, so to speak. And then I had also the downside of what if you don't do things within the right priorities, the cost of it. And in this
right.
case, it had really cost him his happiness. It had cost him his family, and even though he had all the money in the world to do whatever he want, um, uh,
He
he
wasn't happy.
and he didn't have his family to do it with him, right? So that happened, and then I got a corporate America job, and the corporate America job was the job that I really hated because it felt like it felt like I had like leeches like attached to my neck, just like draining the lifeblood out of me like every second I was there, right?
What a
Um,
gross visualization, but
yeah,
a great way of getting the point across.
that's right. And um, so that was such an interesting experience. And what I really didn't like about it was I wasn't providing any sort of value to
You
anyone
didn't
really.
want to
Like
just be doing a
I
job and
I was
making money. You
that's
needed
right.
to fulfill a purpose or
That's
help
right.
people. Yeah.
I was just pushing paperwork. And if I did a great job, my boss didn't notice. If I did a terrible job, my boss didn't notice or care. And I was like, okay, life's too short for this. And I fell in love with the idea of real estate investing because I was like, well, if I buy a property, put some money into it, I can make a home for a family, and I can feel pretty good about that because the property needed work, right?
The little seed of this
Uh-huh.
multi-million dollar enterprise starts to take
Yeah,
root.
that's right. And then I was like, okay, well, I can dig that. And then I also was like, well, financially, if I get really good at it, I have it's not unlimited investing into real estate, but I mean, it's a pretty high upside, right? So if I get really good at it, I can be financially rewarded. So like the only way I can describe myself is I'm very pragmatic and I'm very altruistic at the same time. I like to make money.
Wow, what a
I like,
great combination.
that's
I
right. And I
really
like to help
love that.
people. That's right.
Yeah.
And so I was studying real estate and I studied it a tremendous amount. And then finally, it took me 18 months to end up doing my first deal. And for anyone that hears a story, like fast forward, we've done over 3,500 deals now. And yeah, and it's multiple real estate companies that I'm a founder of. For anyone that's new, I like to preface that with like, don't compare yourself to Jim in his 17th year investing full time. Compare
I,
yourself to me in my first 18 months when it took me, I only did
you
one deal
know,
on that
actually,
timetable.
Jim, that's pretty average. Like we were talking a little before we went live about you
Yeah.
were a Fortune Builder student, I was a Fortune Builders coach. And so I've literally coached probably couple, three, four, a few thousand investors now.
Yeah.
And at Fortune Builders, it was a lot of people just starting out. And there are still some of those people 4, 5, 6 years later who've still never done a deal because there's something blocking them from taking action. But on average, I've noticed if you're able to do a deal while you're learning within your first 1 or 2 years, you're doing good actually,
Hmm.
because what people don't realize is even though there's a great payoff, it's, I liken it to you're choosing this as a career, a profession. You have to learn the skills and learn the profession, and that takes time. And with a lot of professions, there's lab work too, or practicum, or a internship. And so you got to
Yeah. And
know
you have
what
to break
you're
through all
doing.
that fear too. There's a
Yeah, you've
lot
got
of,
to learn and implement. I will often say to people, instead of like a lot of analytical people think they've got to learn everything before they can do anything. And I say, let's just learn how to do market research right now. Let's start there. Okay, you
yeah.
got that. We got that. Okay, now let's just figure out how to, you know, generate leads, and breaking how to analyze a deal, how to make an offer. That, I just think like Alex Hermosi, marketing
Mhm.
king, says you got to put in the reps. You got to do the work. You got
Yeah.
to learn and implement, learn and implement. Anything you
Well,
want to say about that?
yeah. And I would say, like, for me, there's a really good saying, um, uh, education without implementation is entertainment. And
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you've heard that one or not before, but what happened with me was I was so afraid. I was like, oh, I need to learn more about it. I need to learn more about it. I need to learn more about it. And I was almost in just like this learning loop that like, yeah, I was learning stuff, but then like I was forgetting what I had learned a month ago. And the real thing that was happening to me is I was just afraid and I hadn't faced the fear to then start actually doing stuff, right? And so I found that there's two different types of people. There's that type, which is very common. That's what I was in. But then there's also a type that will just do a bunch of stuff that should also get a coach and should learn and take more
Yeah,
time and
because
be more
I
patient
have
too, right?
coached those people
Yeah.
where I started coaching a guy. He ended up being bipolar, and we had to deal with that. I'm like, look, dude, I can't coach you in the state you're in. But anyway, he was in the
Mhm.
process of, he was dangerous. He
Yeah.
had bought a house as a rental, didn't know what he was doing. So when I coached, I suggested he not go through with the deal, and he did. And then when we analyzed it, he was losing money every month on it. He bought a
Mhm.
property as a rental, and what it was a terrible deal. He wasn't
Yeah.
making any money on it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So like, I like to tell people there's a middle path. And like in that middle path, you really eloquently explained it. Like learn and
yeah.
implement, learn and implement. Don't just implement without learn, and
Learn a little, implement,
learn
because,
through rookie implementation, right?
yeah,
Um, now,
there's a reason that's effective. Sorry for interrupting. I want it, the mindset of that is, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. Learn and implement, learn and implement. Here's why. When you only learn and don't implement, you get overwhelmed. And eventually, if too much time goes by, you don't even try, you give up. Or if you only implement and don't know what you're doing, at some point you'll give up because you're failing because you don't know what the hell you're doing.
yeah,
When you learn and implement, especially for you really analytical people who get stuck in analysis paralysis, when you learn a little chunk and then you play around with that information and you actually implement it and see that it works
mhm,
and get it down until you've mastered that little piece.
yeah.
Now you've got confidence, you've got proof of concept, and you're like, oh, okay, one building block. Okay, now I'm going to
That's
move
right.
on to the
Yeah,
next.
and what's interesting is sports is a really good analogy to where like to really drive this point home.
Mm-hmm.
I can read a book on shooting free throws, but I'm not going to be any better at shooting free throws until I like learn some of the technique and I practice the technique and I actually
Right.
get to the gym and I actually shoot the free throw. Well, real estate or really like any sort of business or learning anything's the same way. Um, you're going to have to get some reps in. You're going to have to like actually do it. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the other interesting thing, and so Passive Wealth Show is the name of my podcast that I've started, is that there's actually a third way to invest in real estate that a lot of people don't talk about, and that's really like the passive way to investing into real estate. Um, so there's an awareness that's required. A lot of people will say, "Hey, I want passive income." And then they buy their first rental property and they're like, oh man, being a landlord, like I don't know who to call to like plunge the toilet. Maybe I should go over there and plunge the toilet, but I'm busy. I got a full-time job. I don't have time for this. And then they kind of bounce out of the whole industry. Well, depending on who you are, you might actually want to be a passive investor
Like
instead of an active
truly
investor.
passive.
100% passive, and there's a way to
Yeah.
do that. And like the thing with real estate investing is there's work that's required, right? You have to find the deal, you have to negotiate it, you have to appraise the
Or
property, you
you
have to
pay
manage
other
the
people to do
contractors.
that for you.
That's right. Well, yeah. So,
Right.
so all that work's required, but like,
Right.
if you already have money, it doesn't have to be you doing the work. You can partner with someone else to do all of the work for you. So so a lot of people will start out kind of down the wrong path. That's actually what they want. They want it to be truly passive, and the only way to do that is to have somebody else do the work for you. Yeah.
Well, automate and delegate, like leverage technology and other people's time and talent. But people don't realize that passive income doesn't mean, okay, now I'm just going to do whatever I want in life. They don't realize that, E-Myth, Michael Gerber,
Mhm.
to move out of technician and even manager role into entrepreneur role, one, if you're a visionary entrepreneur, you need to find integrators in your organization that are going to make sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed.
Mhm.
But there's still got to be oversight. And I suck at oversight. I hate, I had to have a a come to Jesus conversation last week with my VA team saying, guys, I'm going to take responsibility for this, but I suck at oversight. What is oversight? Managing people, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I'm not good at that. I just assume if I tell you to do something, you're going to go do it.
Mhm.
And I said, so that's the kind of team I need you guys to be. When I ask you to do something, come back and communicate with me when it's done, so I don't have to,
Yeah.
and with passive income, you know, you're still gonna have to check in. You're still gotta know what's going on, or the mice run
Yeah,
away
so
with the
so
cheese.
so you're right, and there's a little nuance to that I'd like to add
Yes.
into this conversation.
Mhm.
So the part that you're 100% right on is the concept of, okay, I'm going to open up my own new landlord business, and then I'm going to hire a property manager, and I'm going to get the right contractors in place, and even hire someone to find me the deals and negotiate them and everything. That concept still doesn't ever really get to 100% passive income. You're really building a recurring revenue business model, because ultimately, what happens if the property manager messes up? Or what happens if a contractor? I mean, the problems flow up to the owner of the company, right?
Yep.
And from my perspective, I started out as an active investor, partnering with people, that put their money in with us, uh, back in 2006. And I've been doing this since 2006 full time, working my tail off. And I'm in year 17, and I have it whittled down to I'm spending 1 day a week on the original businesses, working on the business, and the team does all the other work. But it's still like I'm still involved 1 day a week on this stuff, and it's taken me 17 years full time. So um, other people have done it faster, but I can promise you it's incredibly difficult. Now, the people all along the way that since 2006 have been getting passive income from us, the model that we used was called private lending, where if an investment deal needed $200,000 for it, they could lend us money secured on the real estate and just get passive income from it. So they really actually didn't do any work, because our team in this case was doing 100% of the work. So there's different structures to do, and you can actually have passive income, but you're going to need a real estate fund structure, or you're going to need a one-on-one relationship with the Ryanas of the world, that want a funding partner, right?
Yeah, well, also, have you gotten involved in notes? I've interviewed a few guests on my podcast over the last couple of years, and there was one gentleman who had a big rental portfolio and he sold it all. He said, I don't want to own real estate and I don't want to manage it. And he was doing creative finance notes. So, and
Yeah.
the
So
way he was doing them is there was an upfront, and then he would carry a note for 5 or 10 years and, all that. And that there's a lot of people on that side of the business that just claim that's truly passive income when you're carrying notes, because even though that real asset
Mhm.
is yours, if they default, you're not the landlord, you're not having to manage the problems with the tenant or anything. It's just you can foreclose on the property if they don't pay the mortgage.
Well, yeah, so that's the thing though, right? I still consider that recurring revenue,
Yeah,
because the second something doesn't go right, who does the problem flow to?
right.
It's like, oh, well, then you have to foreclose on it. And then who found the note in the first place? Well, it took you time to go out and find the deal, right? So,
All
so
right, so
now
distinguish.
that is, there's some that are more passive than others, some strategies,
Right.
but I believe that to be still a recurring revenue business model.
So
Now,
make that distinction
yeah,
because
now you can, on a business model like that, you you probably could kind of get the equivalent of a property manager or a note manager, I guess technically would be called, and have a team member do it, but then still who's managing the team member? And if the team member stops doing the work, like where does the problem ultimately flow up to? It flows, it flows up to you as the business owner, right? So I mean, that one is probably as close as it gets. But even that, there's still that little bit of active work
So
that's
talk
required.
about that. Make the distinction for you, the distinction, because no one else has ever talked about this to make that distinction
Mhm.
between recurring revenue
Yeah.
versus passive income. And if is Jim, they're truly passive income, because ultimately that means you're not involved at all. That I don't know how realistic that is.
Yeah.
So
So
make the distinction between the
yeah,
two,
yeah.
your
So
distinction.
in real estate fund structures or syndication deals, when there's limited partners and general partners involved, I do consider those structures to be passive income. Because it's the general partner's jobs with all the problems flow up. It's 100% on the general partner to solve and to handle the problems, and the limited partners. The word limited there is that is the
They
setup.
just give money and they get their
It's
dividend
investing
check.
a dollar as the same way you can invest a dollar into the stock market. You can invest a dollar into real estate, like with retirement account money and all that. That structure does allow for it. But the interesting thing, so I am a real estate fund manager, so we have our own thing. Like for me, it's not passive income. I'm an active investor building a real estate fund, creating recurring revenue so that my partners can have passive income, right? So like, so it's so fascinating to me is that the same income source can actually be two different things depending on who you are in the relationship. um uh so so yeah, so it's a I nerd out on this stuff. Hopefully other people are interested in this too.
I'm loving it because it's
But
so unique and you're
yeah,
not saying the same thing as everyone else.
yeah,
So then it comes down to like when I think about passive income over the last year, it's been kind of funny because there's been passive income, but was in unexpected ways. It wasn't really passive income, like
yeah,
having a job where it wasn't very demanding and didn't require a lot of time, but I was getting paid a salary. It's like, oh, that's passive income in a way, because
yeah,
I'm not having to do much for it.
yeah. So
So
I would call
really,
that
is there ever really any true, pure passive income unless you actually hire your whole leadership,
yeah.
your CEO, a board, and all they do is
and
report to you. And even
and
then,
yeah,
if you're wanting to be a purist, you still have to have conversations
yeah.
and still let your intentions be known.
And it is, that's right. And kind of like a little hack towards it would be if you had a business partner and you developed that whole structure, and then you said, hey, business partner, any sort of problems that
Run with
this
it.
the active CEO can't handle, like they need to go to you. I'm not dealing with it. So it is possible, but like um uh it's not common. Like it's, we're
Yeah, and
talking
then you
talking
go
to
to
very
the
few
others.
people achieve that.
Yeah, and why do we all want passive income? We want more time, we want more freedom, we want
Mhm.
a work-life balance, or we want the freedom to be focusing our time and energy and attention on things in life that we enjoy.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that a lot of newer people that get into looking for investments to build wealth don't get is they think it's going to be easier. It's like this quick thing, like your first deal took 18 months.
Yeah.
What they don't get is actually it's a lot of hard work, and people that are millionaires and billionaires, they actually work really hard. It didn't
Yeah.
come easily. It was later on, after blood, sweat, and tears for decades, that they earned that. It didn't just happen in a year or two. And then the other thing is, then after that, like you built several companies. All it did was free you up to go, well, I like working. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to go redirect all my talents and brilliance. What's the next challenge? And that's truly when you're an entrepreneur because, okay, what's the next hill to climb? What's the next
So
mountain to conquer?
yeah, and I can share my story on this. So a
Yeah,
couple of
please
years
do.
ago, I mean, my goodness, it's like you're reading my mind. Wow, it's a scary place to be, reading being like it's Cinco de me, right? Um, so I had a conversation. So I was 38 at the time. I was a couple years ago, and I was just like, I was like, okay, like I have enough real estate. I can call it quits if I want to. And we're doing the same kind of the same thing over and over again. And like I was like, man, like I almost need like a new why. I'm getting like a vision for something
You're
like
getting
bigger.
bored. Yeah.
I was getting like a little bit bored, right? And then I had a conversation with a friend, and that basically, I mean, it was a long conversation, but to sum it up quickly, he said, "I'm afraid of running out of money before I die," and I said, "Well, that surprises me. You're a self-made millionaire. Like, help me understand. What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, I did everything the financial industry taught me to do. I worked my tail off. I put money into a retirement account." And now the stock market's going crazy. There's all this volatility going on right now. Inflation's going through the roof. I'm retired. I'm in fixed income. I'm in my 70s. I can't time the stock market. I'm forced to take out and sell a portion of it every year. I said, whoa. And he said, well, if I live to be 90, I'm good. If I live to be 100, I don't know. And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, this is kind of messed up because I'm 38 and I would be okay. And the reason is because retirement is a cash flow problem. It's not a nest egg problem. If it was a nest egg problem, you would have to know exactly how long you're going to live. And you would have to know, like, are you going to have any health issues or not? Are you going to have to be into a retirement home, or are you not? Are you going to be okay with that?
And that right there, nest
Mhm.
egg, truly is passive income when you're receiving it, but it wasn't passive to create it.
That's right.
All right, so
And
keep going. I like
well,
where you're
yeah, and
going.
so I thought about it, and it was like that uncertainty. And he's like, and here he is in the 70s. He's like we've had a bucket list trip to Europe planned. I don't know if I can even afford it. And I'm thinking to myself, like,
Says
this is
the
no
poor
way you
millionaire.
should live a retirement in fear. And so, okay, so that was going on. I'm like, and I'm thinking, like, from an altruistic standpoint, I'll get to the pragmatic thing in a second. But from an altruistic standpoint, I'm like, gosh, there's got to be so many people just like him. Like, wouldn't it be great to be able to have a whole wave of people in their 70s, like in a few years from now, that are financially free, that don't have to worry about be in this same state. And then pragmatically, a couple things were going on. Well, the first thing is that we're in a housing shortage. Okay, we're over 5 million houses underbuilt per the National Association of Realtors, and then Harvard did a study that there's another 21 million houses that need to get built through 2038. Okay,
Where
and
are you? Where are you in the country, Jim?
so we're in St. Louis, Missouri, and
I'm in
we haven't gone
Asheville,
as
North Carolina,
yeah, we haven't gone
and
as up as some of the coasts have.
yeah,
Yep,
our local market definitely is is an indicator of those stats because Asheville, they can't build multi
yeah.
hundreds of apartment units fast enough.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I'm thinking pragmatically, I'm like, well, we could I mean, if I can buy as high of a percentage of single family homes right now for the next 10 years, like that's going to be a great opportunity from an investing standpoint. And then I thought about it. I'm like, well, and then my like I already have the team that can do it. Our model is a lease purchase model, which is what's crazy about this model is that it's higher returns and lower risk than what a traditional landlord has. And so I thought about our model. I thought that we already have a team that can do a lot of deals. We have a market situation to capitalize on. And then on the altruistic side, I could create an environment to bring in a bunch of passive investors, a bunch of passive partners, and invest together and kind of get our piece of the pie. And then in an ideal world, have a bunch of people uh, that are financially free, then didn't have to do any of the work. They were able to just sit on the couch and let our team do all of it for them. So, um,
Meanwhile, while you're infusing the supply that's needed,
Yeah.
providing more homes.
That's right. Yeah. And then
What
there's
about developing, Jim? Have you ever considered going in that direction?
we've done that a couple times, and that's on our not do list based on how well the first couple went.
It's labor intensive. Yeah.
And we were flipping a lot. So we got up to 120 flips at the same time. So we were really focused on that.
Concurrently, 120?
Uh, we were doing that like in 2016, I think. Or was that 2017? I don't know. We've done hundreds of rehabs over the years. We were doing 100 plus for like over a decade. So flipping was like our predominant thing. And then we fell in love with this lease purchase strategy because it's more money over time and a lot less risk. So then we shifted into predominantly the lease purchase model. Um, but
Do you want to say a
when we
little more
tried the new
about that?
construction, we were set up to do the flips, and so then we executed poorly on the new construction. So we were like, okay, you know what? That's not within our core competency. And
It's very humbling, isn't it? I know other
Mhm.
investors who mastered a niche, they were experts in it, they had
Yeah,
mastered it, and then they got curious or greedy and thought, well, let's try
yeah.
this other market, and took a bath, like
Yeah, it's
lost.
all about the execution. That's right. Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
friend that was financially free set. She decided to buy a apartment complex, and she did it at such a scale that it ended up taking her everything out. Even though, I mean, she had enough to be done, and but she got bored and went after too big of a deal that knocked her out of the whole game and she had to rebuild from scratch. So yeah, that absolutely can happen for sure. Um,
So talk about your lease purchase, like, because that's a big part of what you guys do right now, right?
yeah, yeah. So, in a lease purchase model, the reason why it's a higher return and lower risk than traditional landlords is the stats that I have pulled is that about 20% of your operating income goes to repairs and maintenance. Well, in a lease purchase model, what you do is you put the tenant in the place of a homeowner, and they're responsible for all the repairs and maintenance, right? So right off the top, 20% of the normal operating costs gets reduced. Now it doesn't go to zero, or at least we haven't figured out how to make it go to zero because sometimes there's repairs that are needed if it's the right thing to do and if you have integrity, right? But I mean, I think out of uh, $20 million worth of real estate, we had like $4,000 worth of repairs in the first 3 quarters of last year. So, I mean, it doesn't go to zero, but it dramatically lowers it. And the interesting thing though is it actually normally you think like high risk, high return. Well, in this case, it lowers the risk, but then the returns because they have down payment money to pay you, and on top of like their normal monthly payments, the returns actually go up. So we have some clients that will drop 20, 30, $40,000 before they even move into the property. And then when you have that much skin in the game, what happens? You're
Right.
much more
And when
inclined
they're
to play on.
responsible for the maintenance,
Yeah, you're
you're
gonna
gonna
pay
have
on
better
time.
tenants. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not you're gonna do everything you can to not mess this deal up, pay on time, not neglect the property, not put holes in the drywall and all that a traditional landlord has.
What's the
Um,
usual term you do? Because I mean, but have you still kept a bunch of rentals, traditional rental
uh,
models? Are you
I'd have
hang
to
on to
check.
inventory or?
I'd have to check the spreadsheet. We had about 14 vacation rentals, and I think we've converted about 6 or 7 of them to the lease purchase model. Uh, uh, because like when it comes to vacation rentals, the thing I don't like about them is you are dependent on the economy, and real estate's normally a great hedge against like a recession because real estate doesn't follow what the overall economy is doing. It follows what the supply and demand of housing is doing, right? So it kind of like one of the best things about real estate, it kind of like nulls it. The other thing I don't like about vacation rentals is I don't have control over the supply of them. I could have a vacation rental that last year was doing really well. Then I had
Then the
three
market
other
gets
three
flooded.
other investors on my same street decided to put them in, and then now I have an oversaturated street, right?
Well,
And
and
because of
also
that
they're
lack of
higher
control,
maintenance. There's a lot more maintenance, a
yeah,
lot more wear and tear, a lot more
uh, yeah.
activities that you have to manage in a
That's
short-term
that's
rental.
right. And we're not equipped to manage the properties well because of all the other stuff we have going on. So we have a really good property manager that does that for us, but that then eats into the profits quite a bit. So then, like, just because a property is grossing $10,000 doesn't mean you're keeping that.
Right.
And then what St. Louis City did was they doubled the property taxes on us too. So by the time we added up, it was really a sexy thing that were excited about when we started it. Then we started adding up all the expenses. It was like, oh, that gross income, the net income's like, well, this is kind of
All
equivalent
this
to.
work, and when it's all
That's
said and
right.
done,
And
maybe
like,
you're
is it?
making $1,000 a month.
Yeah. And I don't want to. If executed properly, it is a really good strategy.
Well, and in some
So
markets,
I
and
don't want
for
to
some
discount that.
people,
A lot
it
of people make really
works.
good. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
people make
like,
really good money with it.
yeah. I remember interviewing someone last year, and the way he had done his short-term rentals, he
Yeah.
retired and supported his whole family on like 7 or 8
Yeah.
short-term rentals.
Yeah.
That it was working for him. So you're not as concerned as about holding on to assets long term. The lease purchase model is just a better return. So you're still continuing to acquire property. What I like about that is you're also giving people a chance to be homeowners that might not be able to do it the traditional route,
Yeah.
especially if you add creative financing in there.
Yeah. Yeah, now you're getting into the altruistic part of me too. It
Yeah.
creates such a win for the community. We had one of our first clients was in a domestic abuse situation, and her ex was so controlling, she wasn't allowed to open up a credit card. No credit card means no credit score. And when we came across her, or when we crossed paths, we were like, well, why don't you just be a homeowner? You're a teacher, you can afford this starter home. Um, no, like we can break this cycle and not have you be a tenant for another 10 plus years to maybe then have enough down payment to uh you know like ready for a house
Yeah,
and have
because
credit
you
build up.
helped break a cycle of dependency and abuse,
Mhm.
because a lot of times
Yeah,
women like that, they're very
yeah,
vulnerable to getting dependent on someone else again. And that cycle,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that
and our
must be
yeah.
so rewarding to
That's
help
right.
someone like
And so
that.
then part of our real estate fund that we have is we have an individual named Xavier. That's a veteran. And after he got back, he became homeless. He had some hard times, and we're partnering with a local charity called Restoration House. They have him in a program. He's employed now. He's back up on his feet, and we're gonna help take him from homeless to homeowner, and the fund's allowing us to do that at cost and be able to put that
Do
together.
you
And
guys work with
um,
Habitat for Humanity at all?
we do not currently know.
Yeah,
And
that's more a volunteer model, but
yeah.
there are other models too.
Yeah,
Um,
so yeah, so then the lease purchase model, so about half our clients are feel good stories, and then the other half are just common sense,
it was a
pragmatic
good
stories.
investment. Yeah.
Like we have a multiple marijuana clients that the world hasn't caught up yet, and they can't get traditional loans. There's a chemical engineer with an 800 plus credit score. She makes over $200,000 a year. Got decided to get into the marijuana industry to make more money, and we said, "Hey, why don't you be a homeowner?" She's like, "Oh, didn't think I was going to be able to get a normal loan." Uh, and that's going to change. But that's a great market opportunity right now. And divorce is a real common one too. We have a doctor that in Missouri you have to have a marital waiver signed. So if you're married to a soon to be ex, if you want to buy a house, she would have to sign off that it's okay for you to buy the house. Well, if you put extra money into a house and you're in the middle of a divorce, well, they could say, well, no, that's half mine, right? Multiple divorce people where it's like, hey, well, don't rent for a couple of years while your divorce settles out. Just you can enter into our
You're
program.
providing
Yeah.
solutions to people that, one, can't get things through conventional financing. And also I found with, like, something that I want to do more of is creating little micro community, bedroom community, cottage community, where you buy a property and you house hack and you add some units, and you've got one property maybe on an acre and you have 4 or 5
Yeah.
units on it, like that. And um, what's a challenge is, like, for example, that the institutions that control a lot of the finances, they're slow to catch up to what are the trends. If you have
Yeah.
a housing crisis in a country, and like in Asheville, for example, Asheville and the state of North Carolina, it's legal to have container homes.
Yeah.
And yet it's almost impossible to finance a container home. Usually container home builders, because it's a trend that's
Yeah.
growing, will provide financing, but it's not mortgage financing, it's personal loans. So you're looking at 20%,
Yeah.
so, like, having a company business like yours, and there's other people like you out there that really want to marry practical and altruism, are helping those,
Mhm.
the words on the tip of my tongue, the marginalized people. Like, Asheville is a hospitality area. There are not only all the people that make Asheville as cool and funky and weird and wonderful, all the people that make it work almost can not only can't afford to buy a house, but almost are being priced out of the rental market. So along comes Jim Manning and
Yeah.
passive wealth and all that.
Yep.
There's so much opportunity for people like you and me and others that, yeah, we want to make a decent profit. We want to have good passive income and all that,
Yeah.
but we also want to help people. I love that. What else?
Okay.
We're getting close to our time. Is there any, like, gold nuggets or anything that you came on here intending to want to share that you haven't gotten a chance to yet?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think before we hopped on, you mentioned like, hey, what would be like the one like important thing that you could share with
We're
people?
not at the
Or
rooftop thing
oh,
yet.
okay,
I
okay, okay.
wanted
Oh,
to
all right,
say,
all right. I
this is,
got one for you.
yeah,
We're gonna
this
wait
is,
on that.
yeah, do you want
Um,
to, is there
I
a pitch? Is
Yeah,
there
so I have
an
okay,
ask?
okay, great. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've spent a fair amount of time putting together some resources to help people. If you go to if you just can remember my name, it's jimmanning.com. That will
So
forward you.
Rose, my VA Rose,
Okay.
Rose, please put that in the comments.
Okay.
Jim Manning with 3 N's. So Manning, Rose,
Yeah.
so jimmanning.com.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, great. And then that will forward you to our podcast, the Passive Wealth Show, the resources page. And in the resources page, I have a bunch of free stuff available depending on what your needs are. I did a course on generating passive income. And basically, what I did is I said, well, I've done over 3,000 deals now. What are my favorite three passive income strategies that helped us in 2022? We generate over $5 million in these strategies all together. And so I said, well, it would be neat to like share with people what those strategies are. And so I took the time to put that into a course. I've done a tremendous amount of market research and trying to figure out, okay, is now a good time to buy real estate or not? And like, why are these institutions and funds buying? Is 2006 going to happen again? I have a white paper on that's available. And anyway, if you sign up, like you can get access to all of this for free. And for people that want to be passive investors, I even created a course called Passive Profits. It's a step-by-step process to your first real estate fund investment. And it helps you identify like, hey, should you be an active investor or should you be a passive one? There's a whole clarity finder section in there. And
Let
the
me
goal of,
quickly ask
you
you
know,
for clarity on that.
yeah.
Could you help someone? Do you have services? Because there are some people that have a lot of capital. They could come in and they could
Hmm.
come in. And
Yeah.
usually, if you're going to be a vested investor, an accredited investor, usually
Yeah.
like with funds, you have to have at least 1 million asset, not including your residence. And you have to come in with a minimum of 100K. Sometimes
Hmm.
some
Yeah.
syndications, it'll be a little less. But do you have options for people who don't have all that? They're just starting out, who can
Hmm.
still make some money and eventually over time get there.
So I think the generating passive income course could be would be really valuable to go through, just from a like, oh, that's how they helped someone make over $40,000 after they sold their property. Like that strategies in there, just from like learning the strategies. And then if you're just starting out, it's very likely that you could take the strategy and then say, okay, well, I want to be an active investor with this. And ultimately, so that can kind of educate you on what some opportunities are. And then you would need there's other great resources out there on how to like execute on some of these strategies. What the passive wealth show is really about is if you have money and you don't have time, like maybe you're a small business owner or a doctor or high up in the corporate world. Like how do you be an astute passive investor? So a lot of the resources that we have is more geared towards that, but there's definitely some valuable things, and also the real estate white paper that I did would be really good for someone looking to actively invest as well. So really like the goal of all this content, what's interesting is I've spent over $20,000 on a single course before. I've spent several $100,000 over the years on different courses, and my goal of it was kind of crazy. It's okay, how do I create stuff that's more valuable and give it away completely for free? And the reality is like why I would do that is I'm a real estate fund manager. My business isn't selling $1,000 or a $20,000 course. And so what I'm really looking to do is just educate people and try and help people build rapport and trust. And when we do have investment opportunities, or have like a bench of people that we can go to that would be interested in it. So that's kind of how I'm winning. And like in our the fund that we're currently working on, we have over 60 partners in it, and there's only 8 slots available left. Uh, and it's looking like it's going to close here in the next couple of months. And
You know what
uh,
I love about what you
yeah.
just said, which is really rare in this industry, and
Hmm.
I want more people to hear this, is if you're so successful in real estate and like you're practical and altruistic, which is a dynamic duo,
Yeah.
and you're as successful as you say you are, and you have millions and you're really comfortable, give your give it away, man.
Yeah.
Give the information away. It's not taking away from you. I love that. Give
Hmm.
it to people, help them. There's where the
Yeah.
altruism is. And I
That's
pulled up the
right.
website,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna plug in and see what I can
Yeah.
do from you.
Yeah. And the thing is like, I mean, eight's like it takes us a long time to do these deals, right? And I have 8 people I can help as like an actual partner. But like by creating the course, I was like, well, I want to equip people
God, I
to
can help
to
so many
be
more people.
and
Yeah.
if the timing works out and we have a deal when they have the cash, great. If not, hopefully I help them invest into something else and like have the skill set that's developed because like that's what it's all about. I want to help more people not be like my friends, scared in their 70s. I want to help people be financially free in their 70s, regardless if we end up partnering on some
Yeah,
deals or not.
what's wonderful is when you are wealthy enough that you're and you don't want to just sit around retired and bored, or
Yeah.
you want to be a purpose-driven person. When your needs in every way are completely met,
Yeah.
now that's legacy making. That's now, how can I have an impact on the world? Like, whether you like Bill Gates or not, he is impressive. There's a little
Mhm.
mini documentary series called Inside Bill's Brain or Bill's
Yeah.
Brain or something like that. And just he started out in him and Melinda Gates looking for world problems to solve, and then realized, oh, we're diversifying too much. We've got to find one world problem that's going to have the biggest impact, and it was
Mhm.
water. It was clean
That's right.
water. And like they're so successful and just so that he's retired, but he's working. Like the
That's
guy
right.
reads like 12 or 13 books a week.
Mhm.
He's out there in the world. And I just love what you're saying. And I know it's your
Yeah,
mom's
no,
birthday, so we've got to go soon.
you did it again. I mean, you kind of read my mind again. Like it's not just it's about
Mind
legacy. It's
meld.
yeah, right. It's not just about the deals for me anymore. It's about the legacy
Yeah.
and how we can help people now. That's
So
absolutely
in honoring of your mom's birthday today,
yeah.
here it is. Rooftop message. You jump up on a
Yeah.
rooftop. Right now, you do have a captive audience.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
you're probably inspiring a lot of people. Please
I
put in
hope
the
so.
comments, whoever's here, how has Jim inspired you today? What was one nugget you took away? But Jim, you're up on that rooftop. You've got this captive audience. They're just hungry for advice that they could take, hear, and heed. What would your advice be?
Yeah, so it would be first and foremost, measure your success by what you gave up to get it. And then the second part, the secret of my success, I think, has been uh, like the first core value that I built all my businesses on is trust. And when you have integrity with not with promises that you make to yourself, and you have integrity with promises you make to other people, and you do what you say you're going to do, everything else gets so much easier. And
That's a core value in my coaching business, but I call it integrity,
yeah,
and
and
inside integrity
you
is
would be
trust.
amazed by the time, like maybe if you're with a homeowner and you make a $5,000 less offer, if they trust you and they don't trust the other person because you've been doing what you said you were going to do, you showed up on time. They could tell you cared about them and that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. It's pragmatically, it's the difference between the 5% of people that make it and the 95% that don't is, and
Absolutely.
it's so simple. Like you just do what you say you're going to do. And
Yeah.
it's so hard at the same time.
And if you
Um,
can't, what restores integrity is
is to
if
let
you can't
someone
do what you
know,
said you're going to do, don't avoid, don't leave someone
Mhm.
hanging. Be proactive and communicate. Hey, something came
Reset the
up. Could we
expectation. That's right.
reset? Could, acknowledge it? Or if you miss that opportunity,
Mhm.
then have the courage and the
Yeah.
character to go, oh my God, and restore the integrity.
Yeah.
Admit that you made a mistake. All right, so
Yeah, yeah, and I mean and it's really that simple, guys. So like in our first year of being a fund, we were able to get over 60 partners to invest with us. Well, um, half of them were people that had already invested with us and some over 10 years had invested with us, and it's because we were just doing what we said we were going to do the whole time. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like
I
it's
mean,
kind of that simple.
it completely um completely eliminates any like drama in your business
Yeah.
when you operate from a foundation of integrity and trust, because
Mhm.
there aren't breakdowns around that.
And then what happens too, like when you're starting to manage people, like I had a brand new team member that told me she was going to do something and she didn't end up doing it. So what I did is I sat her down. This was yesterday, and I said, "Hey, Trust is our first core value when you look at the list. In my opinion, it's the most important one. It's the foundation. And if you tell me you're going to do something, and it doesn't happen, that's completely okay if something's changed. Uh, but you have to let me know and tell me, hey, I didn't get it done because these other three things came up. Or, but by not doing it, you're damaging trust. And if it gets to where there's not enough trust, well, like that's our most important core value, and we work with people that have the same core values. And what's nice about that is like if you when you get really good at implementing your core values and leading with that, it's not a personal attack. It's not a, hey, you
No,
suck,
you're
hey,
just
you
coming
screwed
back,
up,
hey,
hey,
this is
you.
the foundation we work from. It's not personal.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's not personal. It's just about like, hey, and here's the flip side of that.
you're
And
not a
she,
good values fit.
yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah,
and the flip side of that though, as a leader, and what I missed this. I'm going to talk to her about this week. Is that she has the ability, even a brand new person, and she's in her early 20s. If I do something to damage trust, I expect her to call me out on it
yeah.
and to hold me to the same standard, even though I'm one of the founders and I've been doing this 17 years. So that is what culture is, guys. Culture
That
isn't
is
shooting
culture.
Nerf
To have a
guns or,
culture
um,
where people feel
yeah,
comfortable challenging the leadership and saying, well, isn't our core value trust? Well, right here, yeah,
yeah. And I'm not perfect, and team members
right.
will do stuff and forget stuff, and I won't be perfect at doing 100% of what I say I'm going to do. I promise you, I will try. I'm pretty good. I've gotten better over the years. I'm not perfect. I'm pretty darn good though now.
All right, we have to go, but I just want one last distinction. The first point you made on your rooftop advice was
Oh.
compare your success. Say that one again.
Well, and comparing
What
is
did
the
you
thief.
have to give
Yeah,
up?
yeah,
To say a
yeah,
little more about that.
yeah.
Wrap up.
Measure your success by what you gave up to get it.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
So I am very clear. I have a vision written out on what I want my life to stand for, of the good that I want to do for the world, and the goals that I want to achieve. And because I'm clear on that, I have my priorities. So my priorities, my relationship with God, my relationship with my family, and then work. That's my third in the order. And so because I'm so clear on the vision of who I want to be in my priorities, if I if I'm a huge Warren Buffett guy, like I was trying to decide, I was reading a bunch of financial stuff. I thought I might be a financial advisor at one point. I was deciding between that and real estate at the very beginning. And if Warren Buffett came to me and said, "Hey, I have a guaranteed $1 billion a year salary for you, but you have to come up to Omaha. You're not going to be able to see your kids, and you're not allowed to like pray or have any sort of faith at all." Uh, it, I'd be able to say no, because I know who I am. I know what's important to me, and I am not willing uh,
Well, you
to
would
be
end up being like that
successful.
billionaire you work for in your 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. I am not, that opportunity cost is too much. It's too great
Yeah,
for me to get a guaranteed
yeah,
$1 billion. And I mean, yeah, it would be difficult to say no to Warren Buffett, but it would also be at the same time kind of easy, because I know who I am, and I know,
right.
um, um,
Core
I know what
values,
I want.
core
Yeah.
values, being very clear in your core values and the vision
Hmm.
of who, defining very clearly who do I want to be in this life in the world is your compass. And from
Yeah,
that place, from that and your core values, that's how you stay in integrity with yourself.
that's
And
right.
that's where you make your choices from. Otherwise, you're incongruent. And that's going to show up somewhere in your life, that
Mhm.
incongruency, when there's a mismatch of who you're being and what you're doing in life when it's not congruent with your values.
Yeah, yeah, and the only other piece of advice, guys, on the entrepreneurial front, um, I could have made a lot more money um, early in my career. By staying more focused. I think as entrepreneurs, we get a bunch of ideas and we think we can do all of them at the same time. Amazon started out selling books for a couple years.
And
And
they
then,
lost money and people predicted they would fail.
yeah, yeah. So they started out, and I promise you, Jeff Bezos saw what Amazon what like is now. He saw it when he started it.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm going to start out with books and I'm going to master that one thing. And then he made a huge leap, a huge business risk, guys. He got into CDs as a second thing. And several years went by, right? And then he started adding all the other stuff. So a
And then
lot
he
of times
bought Whole Foods and
entrepreneurs,
now he owns the world. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of times entrepreneurs, you'll get confused because you'll see the Amazons of the world and say, oh my gosh, well, I have all these ideas of how I'm going to provide so much value for the market. And then you try and do all of them at the same time and they all kind of suck.
The Power of Focus is a really great
Yeah.
book for people to read who have that
Yeah. And
chasing
then
shiny object
that's
syndrome.
right. And then for us, like, I mean, we didn't branch out into a second business until like the third or fourth year of being in business, right? And then we did do a couple branch outs a little too early, and then we had to readjust and things like that. Um, but and then nowadays, like we do have 5 different organizations going, but all of those organizations are tied together with the same goal of helping people passively invest in real estate and become financially free. Like all of them are needed to achieve like that vision. So like they're all like kind of they're all one giant organization that's needed in the machine. It just so happens we have different partners and we have different things going, so we have to have them split out. Um,
Well,
but
and
they're
that limits your
but they're all like
liability
on the
too.
same wheel,
Yeah.
right? Um, so yeah, so that would be the other thing, guys, is and the, and that's been a 17-year journey for what you see today. It certainly didn't start out on day one like this.
Well, Jim, I want to just thank you just for I love you're very pragmatic, altruistic,
Yeah,
sharing your journey with us, sharing where you're at, what you're doing, sharing that resource where people can learn,
yeah,
making it available to anybody. I really appreciate your generosity. Happy birthday to your mom. I hope you
yeah,
guys have a
yeah.
wonderful day celebrating with her.
Sounds great. Well, have a nice day, and I appreciate you guys. Hopefully, I provided some value.
You sure have. Thanks, Jim.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.